Wrestling and Jiu-Jitsu are both grappling arts and share a lot of similarities with each other. But who would win in a fight? I decided to use my own experiences and research the internet to find out. A BJJ only fighter will beat a pure wrestler 9 times out of 10, as wrestlers don't learn submissions and they cannot end the fight, while a BJJ fighter can. However, wrestlers have far better conditioning and takedowns than BJJ fighters, but really and truly having both arts is best. To be an effective grappler, you need both wrestling and jiu-jitsu. They work amazing together. I will explain the reasons why both arts are effective and why you should train both.
What is going on, guys? It's Dylan, aka the Combat Sports Guy. This channel is going to have everything combat sports related. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, please like and subscribe and comment down below any other questions you want answered. We're going to do videos every Monday and Friday. Okay, back to the video.
I will explain the 5 reasons why BJJ is better than wrestling. 1. Wrestling has no submissions. In wrestling, you win points for pinning your opponent to the ground, doing takedowns or going for a reversal, which is reversing the position you were in if you were pinned to the ground. Check out my list of the complete wrestling rules in my post below. In wrestling, you cannot lock your hands around your opponent's body while on the ground. If your opponent gets your back, you get pinned and lose the match. Notice anything? That's right, there are no submissions. As a wrestler, your tendency will be pinning your opponent, not going for chokes or locks that will end the fight. If a pure jiu-jitsu guy fought a wrestler, even if the wrestler dominated the position, he or she will still not have a way to end the fight despite being in the better position. Naturally, this gives jiu-jitsu guys a huge advantage even whilst being physically outmatched. Look at Royce Gracie vs Dan Severn in my website down below. With a 100-pound weight disadvantage, Royce was able to submit Severn with a simple guillotine after a takedown from Severn. This was in UFC 4 when jiu-jitsu was relatively unknown. For a modern battle of a wrestler and jiu-jitsu guy, see the above fight of Ben Askren vs Damian Maia on my website. Without a good level of striking, jiu-jitsu will usually win. 2. BJJ allows you to defeat a much larger opponent. A wrestling bout is 3 rounds of 2 minutes. This requires quick, explosive bouts of energy, so wrestlers have to be strong, quick, and powerful. This required athleticism attracts born athletes to wrestling. Just look at old UFC wrestlers like Ken Shamrock and Roy Romero. You have to have an athletic background to perform in wrestling, especially at Olympic level, since wrestling is very competitive globally. Jiu-Jitsu is a lot more fluid and slow paced with a strategic edge, where proper application of technique allows a physically inferior fighter to beat a physically stronger fighter. I've seen this countless times in my gym, as I always tap out to people smaller than me. My friend weighs 120 pounds and regularly taps out people bigger than her, and she's only a white belt. This will only happen more frequently as she improves her technique. Jiu-Jitsu being so effective regardless of weight class is why Jiu-Jitsu is so effective for women. To see the other 8 reasons why Jiu-Jitsu is amazing for females, please check out combatsportsguy.com if you're curious to see the 10 reasons why Jiu-Jitsu is really good for self-defense. My website. This flowy Jiu-Jitsu style is far easier on the body than wrestling. It originates from early Jiu-Jitsu matches that could last a long time, removing the need for explosive bursts and natural athleticism. Famously, a fight between Hilo Gracie and his former student Vladimir Santana in Val Tudo lasted 3 hours and 45 minutes, the longest jiu-jitsu match in history. Make use of a universe of countless guard techniques, sweeps and passes and submissions all from their back, whilst a wrestler is only concerned with turning on an opponent to his back or standing back up to his feet. Jiu-jitsu has counters to wrestling. How many times have you seen a jiu-jitsu guy in MMA pull off a guillotine after wrestlers single double leg. It happens all the time. In Jiu-Jitsu, we have many options even in positions that don't look good at first glance. This is what separates both grappling arts in their purest form, and why learning both makes you a superior grappler, as it gives you so many different options. There are many variations of what you can do. Check the video in my post embedded below of Chad Malone and Eli from Night Jiu-Jitsu of the perfect counters to the single/double leg. Pulling guard is the easiest way to defeat a wrestler, as it puts the wrestler into the Jiu-Jitsu guy's world, and it's how my wrestling coach lost to a Jiu-Jitsu guy in Europe's biggest grappling tournament, Polaris Pro Grappling. A wrestler doesn't have a way to put the Jiu-Jitsu guy into their world, as takedowns are difficult to execute and only score 2 points in Jiu-Jitsu, while a BJJ guy can pull guard and instantly put the attacking emphasis on the wrestler. 4. Wrestlers have to adapt to Jiu-Jitsu rules. Remember, in wrestling, the number one thing you can't do is give up your back, otherwise you lose the match and get pinned. Whilst this gives wrestlers amazing scramble abilities, this hurts them in Jiu-Jitsu competitions. As wrestlers often train from young to not give up their back, it becomes a habit that is very tough to break. In Jiu-Jitsu, fighting from your back is a neutral/good position. One of the best grapplers ever, Marcelo Garcia, redefined what it means to fight from your back. For a wrestler to compete in Jiu-Jitsu competitions, fighting from his back will always feel awkward to him or her, so in BJJ rules, the BJJ guy has the advantage. Okay, so 3 reasons why wrestling is better than BJJ. Now, come on now, I am not biased. To be an effective grappler, you need a high level of both martial arts. Having both makes you truly excel, but here is what wrestling has over Jiu-Jitsu. 1. Wrestling has far better conditioning than BJJ. One huge problem with Jiu-Jitsu is, compared to other martial arts like Muay Thai or wrestling, the warm-ups are frankly pathetic. Okay, let me explain myself. A typical Jiu-Jitsu warm-up will be running around your gym, followed by some rows, shrimping, and another exercise. Compare that to the USA Freestyle National Team's warm-up, which is quite common at high school level. Check my blog. This results in wrestling athletes having far better cardio, strength, and power than BJJ guys. Part of it is because Jiu-Jitsu is a hobby to a lot of people, so schools have to cater to that middle-aged, unfit guy and other people who don't train outside of Jiu-Jitsu class. This gives the average BJJ class a laid-back vibe, far more chilling and relaxing than wrestling, and it's far more common in Jiu-Jitsu classes to be chilling, laughing, and chatting away during drilling with relatively low intensity. I remember a National War US war wrestler taking over a wrestling class, and his warm-up was crazy. I still remember him shouting, "Sprawl, sprawl, sprawl," over and over. It is no wonder US wrestling creates such athletes. Wrestlers' short, intense bursts of 3 rounds of 2 minutes require athleticism. Wrestlers are used to this rapid pace and perform well in BJJ competitions for their first time. BJJ guys' slow, relaxed pace does not prepare them for their first grappling competition, as often they are overwhelmed by the frantic pace of competition. 2. Wrestling has far better takedowns, and according to one of the best modern Jiu-Jitsu coaches, John Danaher, Jiu-Jitsu is ultimately about 4 things. 1. Get your opponent to the ground. 2. Pass the guard. 3. Get a dominant position. And 4. Submit your opponent. The biggest issue modern Jiu-Jitsu has is a lack of focus on step 1, getting your opponent to the ground. Head coach of TriStar Gym, Farais Zahabi, said he has seen BJJ black belts who, whilst deadly on the ground, have amateur looking takedowns. I've seen this myself. I train at an MMA gym, and when I started grappling, I always made sure to cross-train wrestling and Jiu-Jitsu. to give me a basic base in wrestling. And honestly, I had way better wrestling despite training for a few months than some blue belts who train grappling for years. Don't you see the issue with this? Even if you have 10 out of 10 jiu-jitsu, if you cannot take the fight to the ground, how can you use your BJJ? It is even worse if you want to fight MMA, as wrestling is super important, as you can still get ground and pound inside your guard after someone takes you down. Grappling arts are universally considered the best martial art for one-on-one combat, but if you want to use your jiu-jitsu in a street fight without wrestling, what are you going to do? Pull guard? Could be suicide in a street fight, as being on your back makes you vulnerable to kicks to the head, and if you cannot see and anyone joins the fight, whilst the wrestler can effectively end the fight then and there with a takedown into rock hard concrete. Look, please don't do this unless you want to get a case. Coach Zahabi says any high-level grappler should be at least a blue belt in takedowns to unlock the ability to use their jiu-jitsu in a street fight against an untrained opponent. Imagine being so deadly on the ground but being hopeless standing up. It wouldn't be a good feeling. It's like having the best voice in the world but getting a sore throat all the time in your big performances. Takedowns don't have to involve wrestling either. Judo, Jiu-Jitsu's sister art, has a fantastic takedown game involving throws. No martial arts success comes close to the dominance that wrestling has had in the UFC in every weight class, from Ken Shamrock, Daniel Cormier, Henry Cejudo, and arguably the greatest mixed martial artists of all time, Jon Jones and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Is this a coincidence? I don't think so. Picture a jiu-jitsu athlete who learned jiu-jitsu all his life, and at 18 he realizes he wants to start training MMA. All of a sudden his training intensity is perhaps doubled, and it takes a lot of time to get adjusted to the brutal MMA workouts and conditioning to excel at the sport. But as a wrestler who wants to start doing MMA, a wrestler has been training at that breakneck intensity his entire career. This mental fortitude to push past pain and obstacles is what really makes champion. Wrestlers are accustomed to pain, but jiu-jitsu's more relaxed nature makes the brutal nature of MMA a shock. Many jiu-jitsu fighters try to make their transition into MMA. Look at Marcel Garcia making his MMA debut in K1's Heroes in 2007, who lost in 20 seconds in the first round against Day One Key due to a doctor's stoppage by an eye cut. Wrestlers have other advantages in MMA. The MMA stance is very low to avoid and shoot for takedowns. Freestyle wrestlers have the lowest stance and they tend to do better, such as Cejudo and Mark Hughes, than Greco-Roman wrestlers. The wrestler's stance is a lot closer to MMA stance than the upright Muay Thai stance, for example. Wrestlers tend to be better strikers than jiu-jitsu fighters, Jon Jones being the perfect example. But why is this? Perhaps the brutal nature of wrestling training prepares athletes for striking, which can be very difficult as well. Wrestlers tend to land in someone's guard after a takedown, and whilst the guard can be very effective positioned to defend and attack, this is also a good position to attack from the person in the guard, as it is very dangerous and allows someone to posture up and ground and pound like no tomorrow.